Mussa's really upset.
This isn't just a highlight, it's a crime scene. We're breaking down that insane footage from the Pistons-Hornets clash on February 9th, where Isaiah Stewart didn't just leave the bench, he sprinted into a war zone, locking Miles Bridges in a headlock, throwing hands, and dragging him by the hair. 4 players got tossed, but that's just the box score. The real story is the brawl that refused to die even after the refs blew the whistle. And folks, we have the ugly details right here. The fight, let's set the stage. February 9th, 2026. The Spectrum Center in Charlotte. The atmosphere, electric. The Pistons rolled into town, sitting pretty at 39-13, absolute juggernauts in the East. But the Hornets, they weren't just rolling over. 25-28, sure, but riding a 9-game heater that turned them from who cares to must-watch TV, this wasn't a Tuesday night sleepwalk. This game meant something to everyone in that building. Detroit was desperate to keep their crown at the top of the East. Charlotte? They were hungry to prove that 9-game streak wasn't a fluke, that they could stand toe-to-toe with the big dogs. The first half, a total dogfight. Charlotte comes out swinging, dropping 33 in the first quarter, their guards flying around with frantic energy and sniping from the perimeter, but Detroit punches back in the second. They flip the script, locking down on defense and running the floor, outscoring the Hornets 32-24 to snatch the lead at the break, bodies hitting the floor, elbows flying, neither side giving an inch. It was physical, it was gritty, and it was a ticking time bomb waiting for a spark. Then the third quarter hits, and suddenly we aren't playing basketball anymore. We're in a street fight. 7 minutes and 9 seconds on the clock. That's when the fuse gets lit. Hornets center Moussa Diabate catches Pistons big man Jalen Duren in the post. These two giants had been warring all night, banging bodies, fighting for real estate, trading sweat and shoves on every single possession. The funny thing, the foul itself was a nothing burger. Standard big man stuff. 2 heavyweights crashing in the paint. That's a foul. Moussa gets him. Simple, right? Whoa, check that right hand. Duren goes straight for the face to kick things off. That's where it turns. Whistle blows, and they square up. Face to face, standard NBA drama happens 50 times a season. The stare down, the chest puff, maybe a meet me in the tunnel comment. Then everyone walks away. But tonight, nobody was walking away. Duren hits him with a headbutt, then get this, mashes his entire palm right into Diabate's face, like he's trying to erase him. We're not talking a little shove or a bump. That was a full-on face mush. Total disrespect. That was the match in the gasoline factory. And he knew it, too. Look at him trying to sneak away like nothing happened. Buddy, these are grown men. You can't do that. Diabate sees red instantly. He goes berserk. Miles Bridges jumps in. Diabate is hunting Duren down immediately. Coaches, teammates, they're trying to hold him back, but he's tossing them like ragdolls. He breaks free and charges a second time. Pure adrenaline against human barriers. And Duren? He's backtracking, not squaring up, not fighting, just backpedaling away from the monster he just woke up with that cheap shot. But wait, here comes the cavalry. Miles Bridges decides he needs a piece of the action with Diabate charging and Duren running. Bridges comes flying in from across the court like a heat-seeking missile and throws a haymaker, a wild lefty that barely grazes Duren or maybe just misses. Duren swings back, and now it's a free-for-all. But hold on, because the wildest part hasn't even happened yet. Enter Isaiah Stewart. Beef stew. The man wasn't even in the game. Miles is throwing blows, and Stewart decides it's go time. Stewart was chilling on the bench. Warm-up's on. He sees Bridges go after his guy Duren, and the switch flips. He sprints full speed straight across the court. No hesitation. He locks Bridges in a headlock like it's a UFC main event. Then come the Pistons, punches flying, left hand, connecting flush with the dome. And check the slow-mo that came out hours later. Stewart's got a fistful of Bridges' hair. He is literally dragging him by the dreads while throwing hands. Brutal. Bridges is fighting for his life here. He tries a double leg takedown straight wrestling move, but Stewart is just too big. He's an immovable object. Bridges is swinging at the body, trying to chop the tree down, but he's stuck. They're tangled up, trading blows, a chaotic ball of violence until half the arena security, refs, teammates finally prise them apart. You know it's bad when you see actual police officers stepping onto the hardwood. That's when you know you crossed the line. The verdict? cleaning house. Jalen Duren, Isaiah Stewart, Musa Diabate, Miles Bridges, all of them hit the showers. Gone. And they weren't done. Fourth quarter, Hornets coach Charles Lee starts screaming at the refs and gets tossed too, just pouring gas on the fire of an already fractured game. Pistons win 1-10 to 1-4. But let's be real, nobody cared about the scoreboard. The game was over the second the first punch landed. The broadcast stopped, but the internet was just getting started. This thing went nuclear in seconds. The footage changed everything. First, we got the standard TV angle, the safe view, a wide shot of bodies colliding, refs looking terrified, and grown men being dragged away by their jerseys. It was chaotic, messy, and exactly the kind of train wreck you couldn't scroll past on Twitter. ESPN's clip, 4 players ejected, punches thrown, benches clear, captured the sequence from the foul to the ejections. It racked up hundreds of thousands of views before the players even made it to the locker room. But here's the kicker. The broadcast angle, it lied. It left massive gaps, blind spots that the overhead camera just couldn't see. We were missing the real story. What took this scrap from a standard Twitter trend and turned it into a full-blown cultural obsession wasn't the live broadcast, it was the second wave of footage that hit the timeline. We are talking about the digital aftermath. In the hours following the final buzzer, a flood of leaked clips, shaky fan shot videos, and alternate angles started bleeding onto Reddit, TikTok, Instagram, and YouTube. These weren't just highlights. They were pieces of evidence that filled in every blank space the TV cameras missed, and they completely flipped the script on what actually went down on that hardwood. But the real smoking gun? The single most damning revelation pulled from that leaked footage was the hair grab. Look, live on TV, everyone saw Stewart's headlock and the punches flying. It was chaos, but the grainy wide shot hid the dirty details of his grip. Then a close-up angle started making the rounds on social media, exposing the ugly truth. Stewart wasn't just holding him, he had a fistful of Bridges' hair, anchoring him in place while throwing left-handed hammers. That one nasty detail changed everything. It rewrote the entire narrative in a heartbeat. Suddenly, this wasn't just a bench-clearing brawl or a heat-of-the-moment shove. It felt calculated, personal, and savagely controlled like a street fight spilling onto an NBA court. The audience realized they weren't just watching 2 millionaires trade blows. They were witnessing one man systematically trap another man by his scalp just to beat him down. It was visceral, uncomfortable, and impossible to look away from. Then you have the Reddit detectives, who posted a clip titled Alternate Angle, showing Isaiah Stewart launching from the bench, giving us a side view that really emphasized the insane amount of ground he covered to get to Bridges. That clip stripped away any defensive accident or reaction. The premeditated nature of that charge was undeniable, printed in high definition. Stewart wasn't in the paint. He wasn't even in the play. The man watched from the sidelines, made a conscious business decision to choose violence, and sprinted the entire width of the court to dive into a scrum involving a teammate who was already getting help. That level of deliberation, that heat-seeking missile mentality from the bench, is exactly what separates this madness from your typical NBA dust-up. Usually, you get 2 guys puffing their chests out and acting tough, but this was a seek and destroy mission. Then came angle number 3, also courtesy of Reddit, which zoomed in specifically on how Bridges tried to survive the grappling phase. The tape showed Bridges slipping a punch like a boxer and immediately shooting for a double-leg takedown, straight-up wrestling moves before the sheer size difference crashed down on him. The comments section turned into a war zone, with fans debating fiercely about the outcome. Did Bridges hold his own, or did he get ragdolled? The verdict split right down the middle, depending entirely on which grainy clip you saw first and whose jersey you would rather wear. Meanwhile, House of Highlights was feeding the fire, posting TikTok clips that collectively racked up millions of views in record time. One clip put a spotlight on Stewart's full-court sprint with the caption, "Isaiah Stewart ran straight for Miles Bridges," like it was a scene from a horror movie. Another broke down the entire ejection sequence, tracing the chaos all the way back to the Diabate and Duren foul that lit the fuse. Fox 2 Detroit jumped in with an Instagram reel that mashed up shock jock fan reactions with the raw fight footage, blurring the line between news and entertainment. A YouTube Shorts clip gave the people a rapid-fire breakdown, clocking every second, including the coach getting tossed. Even the NBA on NBC YouTube channel had to weigh in, posting a forensic breakdown with commentary, dissecting the escalation from the Diabate-Duren clash to the 4 resulting ejections. Every new angle was like finding another piece of the puzzle. The broadcast gave us the fight, but the leaks gave us the motive and the malice. The hair pull, the clean connection on the punches, the pure desperation of two giant men trying to hurt each other while security struggled to peel them apart. It was pure, unfiltered drama. And that is precisely why this footage didn't just trend for an hour and vanish. It dominated the news cycle. Because every time you thought you saw the whole picture, another clip dropped, revealing something crazier, forcing you to hit replay one more time. Now, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Isaiah Stewart, the repeat offender. If this was his rookie mistake, it would still be front page news. A player storming off the bench to hunt an opponent, locking him in a headlock, and punching him while pulling hair. That is a headline story no matter who is wearing the jersey. But here is the kicker. This wasn't Stewart's first rodeo. It wasn't his second. Heck, it wasn't even his third. It is that accumulating rap sheet, that relentless pattern of escalation that transforms this from a simple fight into a career-defining crisis, turning a suspension into a full-blown reckoning. The first time most fans connected Stewart's name with in-game violence was back in November 2021 when he tried to run through a brick wall to get at LeBron James after a foul left him leaking blood. The images from that night are legendary for all the wrong reasons, pure rage captured in 4K. You had a young, relatively unknown Pistons center with blood streaming down his face, shedding teammates and security guards like tacklers as he tried to fight the most famous athlete on earth. It took half a dozen grown men and multiple attempts to restrain Stewart before they could finally drag him off the floor. The league hit him with a 2-game suspension, but in 2023, Stewart was back at it, getting into a physical altercation with Minnesota's Naz Reid that involved an alleged chokehold. He got tossed from that game, too. But by 2024, the incidents weren't just continuing, they were getting worse. Stewart literally punched Drew Eubanks of the Phoenix Suns in the back tunnels before the game even started, earning a 3-game vacation from the league. 3 games, up from 2, the NBA was already trying to send a message, cranking up the penalty with every new outburst. And then, in March 2025, less than 12 months before the Bridges brawl, Stewart found himself dead center in a massive Pistons-Timberwolves melee that saw 7 people ejected. 7 ejections! That is half a roster sent to the locker room. That chaotic scrum involved Stewart, his teammates Ron Holland II and Marcus Sasser, plus opponents Naz Reid and Dante DiVincenzo, along with the coaching staff trying to play peacekeeper. It wasn't just a scuffle, it was absolute bedlam, benches clearing like a fire drill gone wrong, wild shoving, chokeholds that looked straight out of the UFC, and a chaotic, minutes-long brawl that just refused to die. And surprise, surprise, Isaiah Stewart gets slapped with another 2-game vacation without pay for sparking the madness. That breakdown from the Locked On Hornets podcast, it hit the nail right on the head, perfectly framing exactly where this ugly mess sits in the Hall of Shame of NBA altercations. Let's be real here. Stewart isn't just some unlucky guy who accidentally stumbles into drama. He is the guy who lights the match and pours the gasoline. He is the type of player who looks at a conflict and decides the only thing missing is him charging off the bench to insert himself right into the center of the storm. When every single survival instinct should be screaming, stay seated and let the refs handle it, he chooses to sprint 60 feet like he's beating a buzzer just to start throwing haymakers. And that is the core of the Isaiah Stewart problem. Look, there's an unwritten code in the NBA about how this fake tough guy dance is supposed to work. You shove a little, you bump chests, you bark some trash, and you wait for your teammates or the refs to hold you back so you don't actually have to fight. You take your technical, maybe a flagrant, and you keep it moving. But Stewart, he rips that script up. He doesn't do the hold me back act. The man actually wants the smoke. And at this point, he's done it enough times that the league has a rap sheet on him long enough to justify throwing the entire book at him. His head coach, J.B. Bickerstaff, tried to play defense in the postgame presser, claiming the Hornets crossed the line by swarming Jalen Duren like a pack of wolves. Bickerstaff tried to spin the narrative, framing Stewart's reaction as pure brotherhood, just a loyal soldier protecting a teammate when the opposition decides to escalate the violence. But here's the cold hard reality. The NBA rulebook doesn't have a brotherhood exemption clause for leaving the bench to start a street fight. That's an automatic 1-game suspension, minimum eviction. No questions asked. That is just the baseline. When you factor in Stewart's greatest hits, 2 games for the LeBron incident, 3 for Eubanks, 2 for the Timberwolves melee, plus a laundry list of ejections, we are entering uncharted territory. The analysts aren't just guessing, they're doing calculus projecting anywhere from 7 to 10 games, with some insiders whispering that it could climb as high as 20 or more. The kid is only 24 years old, and he already owns a disciplinary record for on-court violence that rivals the bad boys of the 80s. The question hovering over him isn't, will he get suspended? That's a lock. Take it to the bank. The real cliffhanger is whether Adam Silver decides to make an example out of him, dropping a hammer heavy enough to prove that escalating violence earns escalating consequences. Then you have the Miles Bridges chapter of this saga, which brings its own ugly backlash. Because Bridges wasn't just watching, he was throwing hands. He charged at Jalen Duren from across the court like a linebacker, getting tangled up in a sustained wrestling match with Stewart that involved swinging, grappling, and a failed takedown that looked desperate. He got tossed from the game, and yeah, he's going to catch a suspension. That part of the story is simple math. But what flipped the script and turned the public against Bridges, transforming him from a participant into the target of absolute scorn, was the incredibly poor choice he made after the dust settled and the game was over. Hours later, Bridges hops on Instagram to clown Stewart, posting a comment mocking the enforcer for grabbing hair during the scuffle. He wasn't trying to box, Bridges claimed, sending a message that was as pointed as it was deliberate. Bridges was calling him out, implying that Stewart, widely feared as one of the league's scariest dudes, was too soft to fight clean and had to resort to pulling hair. He was basically saying that Stewart's reputation as a guy ready to throw down crumbled the second real punches started flying. The implication was loud and clear. Stewart held on to his hair because he couldn't handle Bridges in a straight-up exchange, which under normal circumstances is just standard post-fight petty. Athletes roast each other after dust-ups all the time. It's part of the competitive ecosystem. But Miles Bridges doesn't have the luxury of existing under normal circumstances. He is operating under the crushing weight of his own dark history. And that history made his Instagram comment land with a thud, sounding very different than he probably intended, especially considering his arrest for domestic violence in 2022. The details that came out of that case were severe, disturbing, and impossible to forget. He took a 30-game suspension from the NBA, historically long for that offense, and that case has cast a massive, permanent shadow over his entire career. Every single time Bridges gets involved in anything physical, whether it's on the hardwood or off it, that ugly history gets dragged right back into the spotlight. It is inescapable, it is heavy, and frankly, it is entirely self-inflicted. So when Bridges went on Instagram to mock another man for hair pulling during a fight, the internet clapped back with the full brutal force of that context. The backlash wasn't just a trickle, it was immediate, relentless, and everywhere. Fans and pundits instantly pointed out the sickening irony of a man convicted of domestic violence trying to critique someone else's fighting etiquette. The comment didn't make Bridges look tough or clever. It made him look completely delusional about his own reputation, inviting a level of heat and contempt that a simple ejection never would have touched. Now, looking at the discipline, Bridges is facing a shorter sentence than Stewart simply because he didn't commit the cardinal sin of leaving the bench. He was already in the game when the volcano erupted. But don't expect a slap on the wrist. Analysts are still projecting 4 games or more for charging at Duren and turning the court into a boxing ring. You have to wonder if his domestic violence history will quietly weigh on the league's decision, even though NBA precedent usually tries to keep on-court discipline separate from off-court rap sheets, while Jalen Duren and Moussa Diabate are just waiting to see what shrapnel hits them. Insider sources are buzzing, and the word on the street is that both of these guys are looking at a mandatory 2 to 3 game vacation from the league office. You have Jalen Duren lighting the fuse with that open hand mush to Diabate's face, effectively serving as the detonator that blew the entire building sky high. And then there is Diabate, whose inability to be restrained was straight out of an action movie, the way he shed security guards like loose clothing and recharged his battery to go at. Duren, not just once, but twice, he extended a confrontation that was milliseconds away from being contained, dragging everyone back into the chaos. There is the human element to consider his initial reaction to getting popped in the mouth. Let's be real. Getting your face pushed in is going to trigger a fight or flight response in anybody. That observation from the crew at the Locked On Hornets podcast is absolutely critical because it highlights exactly how the league has to parse this mess to hand out different punishments for the 4 ejected players. Diabate's reaction, while extreme and sustained was a visceral, gut-level receipt for getting struck in the face. That is a different species of problem than Stewart's decision to sprint off the bench like a linebacker. And it is miles away from Bridges deciding to bulldoze a player who wasn't even part of the original equation between Diabate and Duran. Every single player played a distinct role in this escalation. Each one made separate, messy choices in the heat of battle, and Adam Silver's team will have to dissect each of those split-second decisions individually when dropping the gavel. But let's be honest. The court of public opinion has compressed this whole saga into a single, impossible question. Who was the bad guy? Good luck finding a clean answer to that, because every person involved in that third quarter meltdown crossed a major line. And crossing lines, that is exactly what turned a random Tuesday night game into the biggest story in sports. Let's look at the bigger picture history, the game itself, and the fallout. The Pistons actually walked away with the win, 110-104. Cade Cunningham was an absolute problem, dropping a game-high 33 points on 12 for 27 shooting, grabbing 9 boards, and dishing out 7 assists. Duncan Robinson was a spark plug off the bench, contributing 18 points, and Jalen Duren had 15 points and was bullying people in the paint before his early exit. On the Charlotte side, Brandon Miller was cooking with 24 points, including 4 3-pointers, while LaMelo Ball added 20 points on 8 for 22 shooting, battling foul trouble all night long. Tobias Harris stepped up and knocked down a clutch, cold-blooded jumper late to extend Detroit's lead just when the Hornets were threatening to steal the game. Detroit absolutely dominated the interior with 60 points in the paint compared to Charlotte's 26, and they forced 21 turnovers that turned into 23 easy points. The Hornets shot a respectable 40.4% from deep on 19 for 47 attempts, but getting crushed inside and treating the ball like a hot potato proved fatal. That result snapped Charlotte's 9-game heater, a run that was one of the best feel-good stories in the NBA before the fist started flying. Now, I'm never going to say I'm pro-fist fight, but emotions were supercharged in this one. And that emotional charge didn't stop at the sidelines. It spilled over to everyone in the building. Hornets fans at the Spectrum Center smelled blood, responding to the altercation with an intensity that reporters on the ground described as a legitimate playoff-level atmosphere. When Jalen Duren walked off toward the tunnel, popping his jersey at the crowd and egging them on, the vibe inside that arena teetered dangerously close to a full-blown riot. Suddenly, a ghost from the past entered the room. The malice at the palace. The most notorious black eye in NBA history was hovering over the court in those tense moments. We all remember that 2004 nightmare between the Pacers and Pistons at Auburn Hills. It started with a hard foul and spiraled into players fighting fans in the stands after a spectator tossed a drink at Ron Artest. The consequences of that night were catastrophic. Artest was suspended for the rest of the season and playoffs, and total suspensions topped 140 games with over $1 million in fines vaporized. Nobody is claiming February 9th reached that level of insanity, but the fact that the comparison even entered the chat immediately, that speaks volumes. And the fact that we are even whispering about it reveals just how volatile and scary the atmosphere became. People were legitimately asking, are we doing malice at the palace again? Are we about to see 40-game suspensions or season-ending bans? That question, asked in real time by someone physically inside the arena watching it unfold, captures the genuine fear that existed in the moment. Because once Diabate broke free near the baseline fans, and once Duren started jawing at the crowd on his way out, the distance between a bad fight and an irreversible tragedy was measured in seconds. All it would have taken was one spectator deciding to play hero, one drink thrown, or one push exchange with a fan, and this incident would have crossed into territory that no amount of suspensions or fines could undo. Historically, the Pistons and Hornets do not share a deep or bitter rivalry. Their all-time regular season record is a tight 68-66 in favor of Detroit across 134 games with 0 playoff meetings ever. Detroit has had their number lately, winning the last 4 matchups, including a 112-86 blowout in December 2025. But over their last 20 meetings, the series is a dead-even 10-10 split. There is no long-standing grudge here. There is no playoff history fueling this animosity. This fight was not the product of a rivalry. It was the product of individual players making rash decisions in a game that escalated beyond anyone's control. As of February 11th, 2026, no official suspensions have been announced. The league is currently scrubbing through all available footage, frame by frame, trying to figure out how to clean up the mess. The league office has turned into a war room, sifting through a mountain of leaked clips, fan videos, and gritty arena security footage in a forensic process that is just getting started. Usually, a review like this wraps up in 1 to 2 days, but when you factor in bad blood, extensive rap sheets, and terabytes of chaotic evidence, yeah, the clock is going to keep ticking on this one. Coach Charles Lee is likely the first domino to fall, staring down a 1-game suspension for his fourth quarter ejection, basically a slap on the wrist in the grand scheme of things. But the real pain is coming for the players. Duran and Diabate are expected to catch 2 to 3 games each, while Bridges could be cooling his heels in street clothes for 4 nights or more. And then there is Stewart, the man who abandoned the bench like it was on fire, threw the haymakers, grabbed the hair, and has frequented the principal's office more than anyone else in the league. He is looking at a suspension that is not just a punishment, it is a vacation. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. The footage is everywhere, broadcast feeds, leaked angles, Reddit detectives on the case, and TikToks racking up millions of views by the hour. We are talking about every wild punch, every desperate grab, and every full-speed sprint across the hardwood, captured from 40 different angles, slowed down to a crawl, zoomed in until the pixels scream, and debated by millions of internet judges and juries. And honestly, that is why this brawl blew up. It wasn't just because punches were thrown in a basketball game. Look, scraps happen in the NBA. Tempers flare, guys get tossed, fines get mailed out, and the world keeps spinning. It is just another Tuesday, but this one went nuclear because the footage kept peeling back layers like an onion. Just when you thought you saw the whole picture, boom, a new angle drops, revealing the chaos we missed the first time, the dirty hair grab, the mad dash from the bench, the takedown attempt, the sound of punches landing flush. The cameras didn't just record a fight. They turned a scuffle into a serialized drama that kept getting bigger, louder, and crazier with every single replay. Thanks for riding this wave with us. Keep your head on a swivel and check out the other cards on the screen. Catch you on the next one.